Hello, citizens of the multiverse. Welcome to our show, Comics Insider, where we give you the inside scoop on two books that came out within the last couple weeks. Now, this week we have a couple big ones. We're only doing two this episode, so I can start to catch up and get closer and closer to where we actually are in the current landscape of comics. But we have Invaders #1 by Chip Zdarsky, and I think two other artists who obviously will be giving them credit, which is really this big callback to like the World War II Marvel and like the original Marvel lineup that played huge roles in the developing American nationalism through comics, but it has its own deeper story that I think has the really big implications for Namor as a character. And next up, we have the long-awaited Young Justice #1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Patrick Gleason. And I know a couple of you guys know that my history with Bendis, at least as of recent, has not been positive. So, you'll have to see what I have to say about that. Now, if this is your first time checking out my channel, again, Dark Knight Nation, nice to meet you. We like to do comic book reviews, story dissections, character analysis, and we like to discuss and break down the things that we love about our comic books. And occasionally, we go into some other geeky content like movies, television, so on and so forth. And if that interests you, please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel down below for more content like that. So, before we get started, I did want to let you guys know that there is an opportunity for you to win free digital copies of both of these books, right? So, you'll have to get midway through the video to figure out how to win. But one of those things involves being subscribed to the channel and liking this video. So without further ado, let's crack this open with the book I assume you guys are waiting for me to talk about most, and that's Young Justice #1 by Brian Michael Bendis and Patrick Gleason. Now, this story is the first comic to come out of the Wonder Comics line by DC, which is supposedly this more optimistic, youthful imprint by DC Comics. I don't want to get too into it. We don't know a heck of a lot about it, or at least I don't, so let's get right into this issue. So, as the issue opens, we learn that there were 7 crises of Earth that affected everything remotely connected to it. Now, if you guys are long-standing fans of DC Comics, you know that there have been multiple different crises, and so one of the big questions that raises here are, which 7 are we referring to? And now, we open up in Gemworld as we learn that these 7 crises have even affected, well, Gemworld. For those of you that don't know what a crisis is, it's kind of this universe-shattering event that affects the natural balance and progression of the universe. So now we go on over to Metropolis, where we meet Ginny Hex, who is the distant grandchild of DC vigilante Jonah Hex. She ends up getting pulled over by one of the cops for a broken taillight, and he finds out that she has a loaded rifle in the car. However, there's this big explosion, and the Knights of Gemworld make their grand entrance, kind of distracting the cop. We move 4 minutes previous to this happening to Tim Drake in Metropolis for some reason we don't know, I don't know, encountering his old friend Cassie Sandsmark. And if you don't know, they're both members of the old Young Justice team, which is supposedly not in continuity right now, and were in the New 52 Teen Titans together, as far as I understand. We learn that Cassie's actually chosen to put up the hero mantle and live the life of normalcy. She's going to school in the fall, she's working a job. Apparently being Zeus's granddaughter doesn't pay a very good allowance. And as these two heroes begin to reminisce and catch up a little bit, there happens the big explosion of the Gem Knights. Tim Drake suits up in a Robin costume, which, for those of you who have been following DC Comics, know that he's now Red Robin in continuity. But Bendis says that this story also takes place in continuity, so I'm really curious to see if he's going to explain it, or if it's just going to be because Bendis. Nevertheless, he suits up in the Robin costume and asks Wonder Girl if she wants to do a Brave and the Bold team-up to go save the day. We can see that there's a lot of skepticism in her face. For some reason, Cassie just does not want to do it. Being the hero that he is, Tim zips off into the danger to save the citizens of Metropolis. I don't know if it's fan service or not, but Tim Drake shows up on the spot and beats the crap out of one of the Gem Knights, Topaz, literally with ease, panel after panel of butt-kicking badass. The Gem Knights begin to surround a couple of the officers of the Metropolis PD, and Robin's already distracted fighting another one of the Gem Knights. But, lo and behold, their savior Impulse arrives on the scene to escort them to safety. And one of the things that I'll have to give Bendis here is I think his strengths really lie in the dialogue that he's using with Impulse. Bart is really, really fast talking, doesn't quite think before he acts or talks. It's just fun, kind of impish. Again, I mean, that could be connotatively, one of the bad things that Bendis usually incorporates in other books. But here, it really fits. I really enjoyed that dynamicism that he adds here to Bart. As the battle ensues above the skies of Metropolis and on the streets, Tim Drake, Robin, and Ginny Hex continue the good fight as Impulse begins to evacuate the city. A lot of really quippy dialogue from Impulse, kind of asking where Superman is, and he's like, oh man, he's going to be pretty pissed when he finds out he missed this. So, during the fight, Robin gets caught off by one of the big Gem Knights, Opal, and begins to get choked out. It leaves Cassie with a tough decision to make of whether to stay on the sidelines or to go save her friend. And clearly Cassie makes the right decision, but it's not easy as she kind of tears her way through it, makes her entrance as Wonder Girl, and saves Tim from potential suffocation at the hands of Opal. And so the fisticuffs continue. Wonder Girl is smacked out a block away and is caught by the mysterious new hero, Teen Lantern. The character seems awkward and shy, and as of this moment, we don't really know what she looks like, but she is on the cover, so we kind of know what she looks like in the end. The ragtag group of heroes then join together to defeat the Gem Knights, forcing them to retreat back to Gemworld. The group chases after the retreating Gem Knights as the young Impulse resounds with a very positive, Young Justice is back. So that's as far as I'm going to take you. There are a couple more pages and some pretty interesting reveals. And by interesting, I mean interesting. This book leaves me with a lot of questions, just like Brian Michael Bendis said it was going to do. Now, A, we want to know what these 7 crises are that are more particularly affecting the scope of the story. B, how does this work? Because as far as this timeline goes, this team had never met. Bart hadn't really existed. He just returned right at the end of the pages of Flash War from the Speed Force, so he hasn't interacted with anybody in this timeline. How do they somehow all know each other? Because throughout the book, Tim Drake mentions that he knows Bart and Connor Kent. About a year ago in Detective Comics and Super Sons and what have you, we went over this, and Tim had no idea who Connor Kent was. So I'm really interested to see if Bendis is actually going to answer these questions. Also, like I mentioned before, Tim Drake should be Red Robin instead of Robin right now. And he has gone out on multiple occasions to say that this story is in continuity and takes place around the current time frame. So I'm interested to see if he's going to actually answer these questions. I'm not going to really judge him on it now because it's first issue. It's smart for him to create a lot of intrigue, especially among skeptics like me. Overall, I enjoy the book. I think that it's really interesting to really be pulling at all these different strings throughout the DC Universe. The crises are obviously some of the biggest, if not the biggest, turning points in all of DC Comics, so it's great that we're really mounting the scale of this story. It's great to have the team back. The dynamics have been really fun, while introducing some really new and interesting characters. I hope that Bendis takes the time to understand these characters, because for me it worked when he was writing for Impulse, because that's just generally how Bendis seems to be writing now, kind of immature and childish, and that's just kind of who Impulse is. So I really hope he's able to get the rest of the characters down, because especially in team books, the dynamics between the characters is the narrative of the story. We need to be able to know who we're following, how we're following them, why they're interacting and doing certain things the way they do. So we'll see. So far, some of the dialogue I thought was also pretty funny, especially for Bendis. I have not been a fan of what he'd been doing for DC as of late in terms of, well, really anything. But the dialogue especially has been one of the things that I've criticized pretty harshly. This issue, it wasn't bad. There were some forced, very Bendis moments, but overall it was interesting. Again, I think that Bendis is doing a great job at just pulling from all these different directions. Also, Patrick Gleason's art is stellar. I just love seeing the way that he emotes, the reactions, that the team gives throughout certain moments of the book. We get a capture of a little bit of intimacy between characters, the action, the fun, the excitement, beautiful, beautiful colors throughout the screen. There were some moments where I felt a little bit lost, especially when the Gem Knights were popping off and fighting the team looking for Superman. But, you know, at the end of the day, maybe that was the intention. It is kind of crazy and wild, and there should be a lot to look at there. I think for me, the strength in terms of the writing is going to be that story that we mentioned, the large scope. It seems adventurous. I mean, generally speaking, I know a lot of us seem to be really glad that we're getting a Young Justice team. And for me, being a big continuity guy, I will give him the first arc to answer some of these questions, especially the where and the when this is taking place, and a lot of the hows of, you know, these characters already having pre-existing relationships with one another. And so, you know, we'll see. At the end of the day, made me really think, because I think I might have overrated the last episode where I gave Aquaman like an 8.3, 8.4. I think this book is a little bit better in the fact that it builds intrigue, but does have more mistakes. They are fairly balanced with one another, but I would be comfortable sticking this anywhere between an 8 and an 8.2. And should you guys pull this book? Yeah. I mean, if you're a long-standing Young Justice fan, this issue doesn't offend me in any point whatsoever. It does leave me with a lot of questions as to, again, the continuity and how this is all taking place. And if you're new and you really want to get into the characters, this is great because, well, these questions haven't been answered yet, and you can just kind of hop right onto this team. And I'm sure, you know, if Bendis does his job right, we will answer those questions that I'm asking. Overall, just a fun read. Easily the best thing Bendis has written for DC so far. So, thanks to my lovely sponsor, AJ's Comics in Colchester, Connecticut, I'm able to give you guys a free copy of The Invaders #1 and Young Justice #1. So, first off, go show those guys some love. There's a link in the description below to their website. Now, what's so great about AJ's Comics? One, the owner and the staff are absolutely fantastic. More than willing to help you out at any time with anything. Those guys are a wealth of comic book knowledge, and honestly, man, it is really hard to find some good, well-natured geeks, and that's what they are, first of all. Second of all, if you live far from a local comic book store, you need your fix, maybe you're a military veteran, by the way, if you are watching this, thank you so much for your service, you can subscribe to their mail-in subscription service. Now, what does that mean? You manage your pull list online, so you don't even have to worry about any hard copy note-taking, stuff getting lost. They reserve all of your books for you and ship them out to you. Now, what's great is as long as you wait for your pull list to accumulate to $100 or more, the shipping's free. It doesn't matter where you are, especially if you're a military veteran. Say you're stationed somewhere out, you know, in the Middle East or what have you. Maybe you're somewhere in Europe. Shipping to the military bases are also free over $100. And no matter what, you guys get a 10% off discount on all of your comics through them. So make sure you go check them out. That is an awesome store to support. I literally go out of my way whenever I can to spend my money and give them my money, even though being a college kid I probably shouldn't. But the comics are good, the people are good, it's worth it. So make sure you go check them out, show them some love. You can find them on Twitter right over yonder, and you might be able to take part in some of their awesome sales throughout the year. So make sure you give them a look and tell them thank you if you win, please. The owner, Pete, is an awesome guy who is more than willing to spread his love of comics and wealth of knowledge with you folks out there. So, how do you win these lovely comics? First off, no matter what, we are giving away a copy of Invaders #1 to one lucky human being that is subscribed to the channel down below and likes this video. Now, how do you win a copy of Young Justice #1? We need to hit at least 15 likes, something fairly small, very achievable, but just something to show that you guys are paying attention. And you must obviously be subscribed to the channel. The final stipulation, go down to these Twitter accounts right here. There's mine, and then there's AJ's Comics. You can find the links down in the description below. Follow us, tweet at both of us with the hashtag ComicsInsider, and let us know, why do you want Young Justice #1? Is this the team you've been waiting for? Have you been waiting for Brian Michael Bendis and Patrick Gleason to hop on the book? Are you just hankering for an awesome group of super rad teenage superheroes kicking butt, fighting crime, taking names? Let us know down there. Yeah, it's that simple. Free comics just for clicking some buttons. Hopefully you guys enjoy the video. That's always a big incentive. But make sure that you like this video, subscribe down to the channel, and check both of us out on Twitter. They are an awesome, awesome store, and I couldn't ask for a better sponsor. Really, guys. So naturally, issue 1 of Invaders picks up in the heat of battle during World War II. Namor sees one of his comrades down, being an American soldier, who we soon learn to be one of his closest friends above the sea. In an attempt to recover the body, he takes a lot of really heavy fire, to the point where he collapses near the body of dehydration. Of course, none other than Steve Rogers, Captain America, comes to save him and rehydrate, as we're brought back to the present day of the story. Namor wakes up from this dream or recollective vision only to realize that whatever happened that day has been getting to him, and we'll later learn that it might have some more repercussions on him as a character throughout his entire existence. Now, because of the events in Jason Aaron's Avengers, he has a bit of a plight against the people of Earth because of a various number of things. It's mostly kind of that tropey, you're polluting my waters, you're killing my people, yay. But I can't really blame Zdarsky for that. He's trying to make the best out of that tropey situation given to him by Jason Aaron. So we pick back up in present day where Steve Rogers is training in this like hollow ground room against a bunch of robots. And he gets a call from the original Human Torch, Jim Hammond. We learn that he's actually writing journal entries about the Invaders' time in World War II, being the super team that pre-existed the Avengers. Even though he's an android, though, what's interesting is he's forgetting. He's existing throughout all this time, but the memories aren't permanent. And so he attempts to convince Captain America to try and save Namor one more time. Now, again, if you guys have been reading Avengers, you know that Namor really only stopped his whole ravaging for at least a moment because of his relationship with Steve Rogers. Now we know Namor suffers from a lot of mental trauma that kind of permeates itself as long-term memory loss. One of the things I find really interesting here is that Jim Hammond kind of seeks to imply that the reason Namor might be so capricious in nature is because he never really recovered from the war, that he has post-traumatic stress disorder. And I think that that idea that something so basically human in construct can affect, essentially a god is really, really interesting. And that being the biggest character flaw in Namor, in that his capricious nature causes him to go from friend to foe and vice versa on the drop of a dime. So I think that that's going to be a really interesting topic to explore throughout the series. And in Jim trying to get Steve to save Namor, he makes a point of saying that he doesn't need the Avengers, he doesn't need the Fantastic Four, he just needs his friends that remember what he's going through. And with that being said, we go back to the past. USA won the day that we had seen earlier on in the title, and Namor is actually actively trying to avoid the deceased soldier's funeral. He's at a bar, kind of gallivanting with women, drinking, and just trying to run away from that feeling of grief and the loss of a friend. And what's interesting here is that throughout Namor's storied history, he's always tried to avoid the humanity in himself. And I feel like subconsciously he knows that if he allows that grief to set in and for him to feel it, it makes him more human. And it takes away that godhood, the kingship, so to speak. And so Steve, realizing that he's not there, that he wasn't planning on attending the funeral, goes to confront Namor at the bar, to which Namor, of course, starts the scene. And he tries to act like none of it really matters. And again, let's focalize that central point that grief is human. And he doesn't want to feel human, because to him, humanity is weak. Cap is very keen on his argument, and he flips the desire of Namor to reject his humanity into making him feel less than human for not attending his friend's funeral. And that is something far worse than Namor could have ever imagined, because if humanity makes him feel human, Cap is now making him feel less than. And how does that define the character moving forward? Back in the present, Namor is attempting to recruit this group of fierce warriors called the Seablades. And they're these skilled combatants who defy the rule of the half-breed King Namor because he's not of pure Atlantean blood. And so Namor's motives are revealed here by his dialogue run over the scene of him arriving to the funeral back in World War II after Cap confronted him. So via the juxtaposed dialogue on top of the flashback, we learn that Namor's plan is contingent upon the notion that he believes that he knows all the secrets of the sea. And that the sea represents secret in and of itself, therefore he has the capacity to hold control over that to a sense. Jim Hammond, the original Human Torch, makes his way to one of his last interviews, and that's with Randall, who was another soldier that was in the unit with Namor and Cap and Bucky and the deceased Tommy. He's pretty bedridden, obviously at this point he's quite elderly, and they begin to talk a little bit about it. Randall actually gives Jim Hammond this photo book, and for some reason Randall's daughter is really hesitant on letting Jim take the photo book. So as she's taking it from Jim, it falls and opens up, to which Jim Hammond gets a look at two really important photos, and I'm not going to spoil who or what it's of. But the photo was old enough to have been taken while Namor was an amnesiac. So again, this kind of points to the fact that this series is actually going to be probably a bigger character study on Namor, more so than any other character. But what's in that photo is pretty shocking and starts to point some fingers in a couple different directions. So you guys should definitely go check that out, read it for yourself. I have to say, I really enjoyed this book more than I expected to. I didn't really quite know what to expect going into the story, but I love that we're really cementing everything in the history of the Marvel Universe, namely the Marvel proper. And not to mention, we're playing along with the character dynamics between the Invaders, something we really don't get to see and haven't gotten to see much of in Marvel continuity, but also the character of Namor and how his past and his time with the Invaders on the shore impacted him as a character forever. I think that if Zdarsky can continue on the trend that he's going at, this could be one of the biggest, most important retcons in the Marvel Universe. Not to mention, one of the biggest items of contention here is that we're cementing the heart of Namor and saving that as a focal point, right? Like, that's not something you often think of Namor or associate Namor with, is his heart and his humanity. And really, we're touching upon his capricious nature as it's manifested because of this post-World War II PTSD. And it explores its effects on Namor as a character throughout history. You know, he loses a friend in battle, and it gives early evidence that he has difficulty coping with loss. And it might be his attempt to detract himself from humanity that prevents him from being able to deal with these very human emotions. And I think that moving forward, now that Namor is going through another stint of rejecting that humanity, things could get worse for him. He's really afraid to exhibit those human emotions, and again, that juxtaposition of Captain America, who makes him feel even less so. The narrative, I think, is going to be framed a little bit through Cap's eyes, experiencing Namor and what he's doing. He was his anchor that tied him down to his humanity, whether or not he wanted it to be or not. And, you know, for someone like me that doesn't know a hell of a lot about Namor, this certainly gets me interested and tells me that the character is far more complex than we ever thought he could be. The art was great. I think the artists did a great job kind of contrasting the flashback scenes and the present, both of which were done really well and in great detail. I love the illustrative choices here, and the storytelling, you know, the framing of the panels plays off really well to keep the passing of time super fluid. I have to give this book, man, at least an 8.75. I think it was really good. It doesn't suffer from a lot of that first issue itis. The story is really interesting, and I'm really excited to explore the dynamics between the Invaders, but also, you know, what they meant to each other, how they interacted, and how things are going to be moving forward. I think you guys should definitely check this book. I'm going to give this a pull. 100% a great place to start on. You don't 100% need to have read Avengers or Jason Aaron's Avengers, but if you did, it'll probably help you out a little bit. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Now don't forget, you do have a chance to win a digital copy of both Young Justice #1 and the Invaders #1. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the channel, like this video, and if we hit the 15 likes, remember we'll be giving away that Young Justice copy. And don't forget, to win it, you also have to tweet at myself and at AJ's Comics with the hashtag ComicsInsider and let us know what you love about the Young Justice team so much. What keeps you wanting to absorb all of the different media that these characters come in. I'm really interested to hear about that, and if you win, please give them a thank you. Now, if you want to make sure you're entered for the Invaders giveaway as well, drop a comment down below answering the question of the day, and we'll be sure to pick the winner fairly soon after this video drops. Now, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more so that we know what we're doing is something that you guys are enjoying, and by we, I mean me. Gotta love one-man shows. But at the end of the day, every little bit of support makes this experience a lot more redeeming for me as a creator and helps me to understand what I'm doing right and what I should be fixing. So thank you guys so much for watching and supporting my content, and I hope that we'll be able to do more and more of these giveaways so I can show you guys how much I appreciate you, and we can spread this love of comics together and culture some sort of community. This is going to be Dark Knight Nation signing out.